What up, y'all? Robert Whittaker versus Reinier going down tomorrow night. Let's talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses from both. Now, let's discuss Whittaker first. So, it's kind of good and bad news is Whittaker's striking is obviously significantly better than DeRitter's. However, a large part of his striking is moving forward much closer to the range that Whittaker wants this fight in, which is a clinch range, or ideally clinched up against the cage or on the ground. So not all striking is good for everything. So we see this as a great example. Some Muay Thai guys are great at transitioning into MMA because their specific style in Muay Thai is good when you are adding in things like takedowns and whatnot. But then other Muay Thai guys, for example, heavy kickers, but guys who can't really box as well, they may not make as good of a transition because takedowns are a factor. In the same way, Whittaker's striking is... Nobody would think of Whittaker as a super rangy, long range type, keep you at a distance type fighter. And especially considering DeRitter and Izzy are about the same height. Yes, there's technically a skill advantage for Whittaker, but it depends on how he plays this, because that same skill advantage could also be a disadvantage if he punches himself right into a DeRitter clinch. I should be a little bit better because we're talking about Whittaker's strengths, but that's the most holistic way I can discuss that particular point. Again, striking is better, but could run him into trouble if he is not good about avoiding clinch. Specifics, he's great at countering over top of an opponent's hand. So Paulo Costa fight was a great example. Paulo would throw a jab. Whittaker would slip his head just outside of that jab and then throw a looping right hand to counter over top of it. And then from there, he would almost throw like an up jab or kind of like a left jab, left up jab to follow up, which really taxed Costa. Now, as far as the stance difference, we need to just be mindful of that because DeRitter is a southpaw. The jab versus DeRitter had a little bit of early success. The jab versus Duplessis had earlier success. As the fight went on, Whittaker came away from that jab. But again, there are positives in the striking game that really could potentially tax DeRitter. We don't see a ton of body work from Whittaker. That said, it would be and it would be a huge testament to his team studying tape. But it would be nice to see if Whittaker can start putting combinations in where he starts taxing the body of DeRitter. We'll get into that a little bit later on. The blitzing is another detail with Whittaker's striking. Now, the blitzing is, as I had discussed earlier, it could be good, it could be bad, because this is how Whittaker lands a lot of his offense, but he can punch himself into clinch. One really cool detail, also I believe from the Paulo Costa fight, is the ability to throw out a kind of like a throwaway shot, let's say just flicking a jab, and in that fight, Costa was trying to counter as soon as Whittaker threw the jab. So we would see Whittaker jab, almost like an auto roll or an auto level change. But as he did that, he would get a little bit closer. So he would throw a jab out and then roll under or level change under a potential counter. But as he did that, he would step and close more distance so that when his head came up out of the roll or the level change, he all of a sudden pops up a lot closer to you and then would fire his offense, which was pretty difficult to deal with for Paulo Costa. Now, some of Whittaker's weaknesses we got to be mindful of. Now, that same head dip that we see that allows him to counter over top of shots will also leave him pretty vulnerable to knees. And we see from the Bo Nickel fight with DeRitter, he's really starting to... the knee game has been a part of DeRitter's stand-up for quite some time, but he's starting to look more Dutch every day with those knees. I mean, they are a problem, and they can really tax folks who are dipping their head out of position. He can throw to the head or to the body with those. So it's something that Whittaker does need to be very careful of, especially if De Ridder is kind of moving forward, walking aggressively, trying to close that distance and using that forward momentum to throw. We already discussed the tendency to have a forward-moving style. Now, it's not that Whittaker has done this a ton, but the logic of a forward-moving style is you can tend to punch yourself into a clinch with someone who is looking to close distance. So, again, something he does need to be mindful of, and it's a bit of a bummy situation for Whittaker because, yes, he does need to stay at range, but fighting someone who is a good bit taller than you at 6'4", it's difficult to get work off if you are staying at range. And we see this because look at Whittaker versus Adesanya. Adesanya, who I believe is the same height as Whittaker, was able to really tax him at that long range. Now, De Ridder doesn't have a long-range striking game like Adesanya does, so that's kind of a sad situation for him as well. But it'd be interesting to see, well, who is the one who is able to step out of their style and close that gap and step into the other person's world. On the ground, there are a few things. Now, Whittaker is scrappy on the ground. He does hustle a good bit. There are times where striking can stop his attempts to escape. We see this with Duplessis. There were a few times where we see Whittaker trying to stand up or trying to fight. I believe perhaps it was half guard. He was trying to fight to a dog fight position. And as he's building himself up, we saw Duplessis starting to throw elbows, throw short punches, and that forced Whittaker back down. Same with submission threats. From Duplessis, I believe it was the Darce, as Whittaker would try to build up from either half guard or when Duplessis was in side control, and Whittaker would try to turn in to get back to guard. We would see Duplessis just threaten with the Darce, and just simply threatening with the Darce would force Whittaker back to a flat back, and Duplessis was able to maintain position. Now, given that De Ridder is a high-level clincher, I know he's a judo black belt, but by no means would I put him anywhere in the same league as Khamzat for takedown game. But De Ridder in the clinch, or if it does go to the ground, the game that Khamzat played versus Whittaker was one hook in, and then almost feeding the opponent, Whittaker's wrist, to the same side as that hook and grabbing it with that same side hand. So, for example, if Khamzat had a hook around Whittaker's left leg, he would pass Whittaker's right hand into his left glove, and so he would wrist control Whittaker's right hand with his left glove, and that would be on the same side that his hook was in. And so this gave Whittaker a really, really tough time with trying to escape, and Khamzat was able to find some short shots just to tax him a little bit more on the ground. So with that said, Whittaker does stay moving. He's not one that is going to just stay on his back. So we will be seeing, I think, potentially a good bit of excitement if it does go to the ground. That said, there are certainly ways to shut Whittaker down, and he has been submitted before as well. So on to De Ridder. The strengths are, well, one, we understand, especially as of late, aggressive pressure game. Now, his striking doesn't really have enough skill to keep him out of trouble until he is in the clinch, but that aggressive pressure gets him there as fast as possible. Now, as of late, he has been throwing a little bit more as far as boxing and things like that, and we understand, again, as we discussed with the Bo Nickel fight, he will throw. There's a lot of ways that he takes advantage of you as he's closing distance with his knees. So one way that we mentioned, or that we saw, was Bo throwing a rear side shot, let's say a right straight, and as that right straight came out, De Ritter would throw the knee underneath it. I believe that is how he finished Bo. Then there are times where De Ritter is the active one, and he can throw a left straight, and then the left knee is right behind it. So there's tons of different ways that he can play with these knees, but they are, again, a huge threat, especially, again, coming from such a tall guy. Inside of the clinch, before we get to that, as of late, we have seen, now, De Ritter used to be a guy who had dang near no boxing. It was horrendous, and it was relatively easy to light him up on the feet. But he is starting to add a little bit more. I think his fight against Bo was the one that we saw the most of the most polished striking from De Ritter. I don't think that is enough to be, at least the hands are enough to be giving Whittaker too much trouble, but all of that together, I think, could be enough to get him into the clinch at least. Once he is in the clinch, he's really good at an overhook game, and it's not really about the overhook, it's about what he does with the other side. His head control is amazing in the clinch. He likes to overhook, and if he is overhooking with his right arm, he will use his left to sometimes pass the opponent's wrist into his overhook hand, and that way he can not only lock down your arm that he's overhooking because he's wrapping over your shoulder, he is able to now almost do it 2-on-1 where he's locking down that overhook arm, and then he's able to grab wrist control of the opposite side arm, and from there he can start adding in strikes. Now, and then from there, if he does lose that wrist control, he has tons of other options with his left hand. He can inside bicep tie. He can go for an underhook with his left hand. And we saw this against Anatoly Malyukin. Forgive me if I'm messing that pronunciation up. But in one, we saw quite a few of his overhook and wrist control options. But he's great at that. And again, also keeping that head control. Against Bo, we saw him use that overhook hand also to block the hips. So if there are like knee attacks coming from Robert, we see De Ritter essentially keep the overhook, but it turns more of a shallow, just draping his arm over, and he'll use his hand and press his hand against the hips of Bo Nickel to stifle any counter knee attacks. So again, his clinch game is excellent, and also while we're talking about it, one of the ways, I guess this isn't technically striking, but he's by no means is he a high-level wrestler, but he'll take shots just to enter into the clinch. So he is basically, much of his shooting game isn't to finish a shot, it's just to get upper body ties, and once he can get upper body ties, he can start working for an overhook, and especially once he's getting into the faking the shot game, as soon as he starts climbing up high with his controls, that's when he starts kneeing the body, and we saw this in the Bo Nickel fight. Now, it's no secret that De Ritter's strength primarily is going to be on the ground. I would argue, again, he has a pretty interesting clinch game. I won't say it's the best, but I would put his clinch game pretty high as well. The ground game for De Ritter is I view it as a dichotomy of jiu-jitsu guys can turn into like a Damian Maia type jiu-jitsu game in MMA, where pretty much all he thinks about is turning it into an IBJJF jiu-jitsu match, and there's very little striking. Or you have a game that's more similar to De Ritter's, where he's able to incorporate striking offense on the ground to start opening up positions or to make the opponent scramble so he can, transition to another position. De Ritter does this very well. And when he does have a bite, even if that bite isn't perfect, he can take advantage of it. And what I mean by this, so I want to talk about his back control. His back control is, he will tend to get very high on the back, but somehow he doesn't lose it. Against Kevin Holland, he went to take the back, had no hooks in, and Holland starts kind of posturing with like tripod and getting his butt high. Now, most guys would just fall over the top with no hooks in, and somehow De Ridder is able to just maintain his balance. He eventually gets one hook, and he can't get the second hook, but he's able to use a post on the ground being that high and still stay on his back. And he used a really interesting a little configuration of the legs where he hooked his feet and locked his feet around Kevin's uncaught hip. So if De Ridder had his right hook inside of Kevin's right thigh, he would actually, but his left hook was not in, he would cross his feet around Kevin's left hip, and he was actually able to control the hip and the rest of the body with that foot configuration. He actually like did a little forward roll, a little somersault, and to his back, and that's how he wound up eventually getting both hooks in and finishing the fight with the choke. So he did this right before his UFC debut, Magomed Murad Khasayev or something like that. It was in like UAE Wars or some other outside promotion, and same thing, high back control, which most people would have just fallen over the top. He was able to maintain it, and I believe he stopped that fight with just ground and pound from the back. So again, excellent control in certain positions. Now, that's not to say that he can't get reversed or he can't get put into bad positions on the ground, but he does what he does well. He does well. Also, even in bummy positions, I believe it was against Vitaly Bigdash where he threw up like an inverted triangle when Vitaly was on top side control, and he just throws it up. It certainly doesn't hurt that he has such long, lanky limbs that he can throw up triangles from his back and side control. Now, his weaknesses. There's a lot, and this is where what he does well, but it's a matter of getting to those positions, and it's a matter of not getting clipped by a striker who's significantly better than him. And yes, Robert has been a little up and down with his record as of late, but getting stopped by the guys who have stopped him, it's not the end of the world, I guess. I don't know that we can be calling Robert completely washed in terms of maybe he's taken too much damage, things like that. Perhaps we can. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors in his camp and his daily life, but taking an L to Chimaev, taking an L to Duplessis, these are not the lowest ranked guys in the division. Now, I'm sure who else taking an L to Izzy at the time. I'm very critical of Izzy, but I will say that I think Robert could have fought a different fight, but this could be a hole. I think Izzy could be a hole in Robert's game because he has a difficult time with height given his forward blitzing style. And anyways, I don't want to go off, but all that to say, I think Robert still may have something in him, so he could be a danger to De Ridder. But let's get back to the conversation. De Ridder's weaknesses: he has a huge reach advantage that he basically doesn't use. What's the point of being 6'4" if you don't know how to keep someone at the end of your jab and how to snipe them from a distance? If all you want to do is just walk forward and clinch and eventually take it to the ground, well, 6'4" doesn't mean as much now. His striking, and I believe we might have touched on this earlier, his striking has improved the tiniest bit. That certainly doesn't mean a ton because he still gets clipped a ton. He's not able to put much offense together aside from his knees are a bit of a problem to deal with, and using it as a counter and aggressive knees. But that is something that is putting him on one leg, and I bet Robert and his camp are going to be preparing for that. So you better come with a little bit more striking offense than just having those knees and trying to work your way to clinch. Now, on defense is where he is atrocious. He will break his stance easily. He kind of goes to a high guard, but not a very intelligent high guard. It's a high guard that's out of desperation, so he's going to lose his eyesight. And when he takes his eyes off his opponent, there's plenty of horrible things that can happen. And he basically just tries to pull the opponent in to where they close so much distance on their forward moving offense that he can clinch them. again, it's can get him to where he needs to be, but he could very well be taking a good number of shots on the way there. And we saw this with Malyukin, and Malyukin was able to put up a really, really good frame game, and every time De Ridder would try to clinch, Anatoly would frame on the arms or frame on the collarbone, on the neck, keep his distance, and just punish punish De Ridder. So it is a problem that he does need to adapt to if he is going to try to get this game into the clinch. In addition to that, because he tends to high guard so much, and he's 6'4", so he has a lot of body that he needs to defend, his body is vulnerable. And again, we saw Malyukin take advantage of that high guard coming up so high. He would just punch underneath the elbows, and I believe that was what led to the end of their second match, where De Ridder just couldn't continue because he was just getting pummeled to the body so hard. Again, just if he is in a good position to get to where he needs to be, I think he'll do well. But it's a matter of getting to that position, and against a guy like Robert, who his striking style isn't great against De Ridder, but his striking IQ is so much higher than De Ridder's that there could be an issue for De Ridder as well. So who's going to take this? The super tall guy who gives up all of his range to get to where he needs to be, or the guy whose striking style could well lead him to having an issue getting to his man, and when he does get to his man to get his offense off, he could just be getting clinched up. Anyways, what are your thoughts? Who's taking it tonight? Please post it in the comments below, and if you guys have any questions, holler below. I will catch y'all on the next one. Thanks so much. Peace.